Steel Magnolias arrived in November 1989 and gathered 6 of the most compelling actresses in Hollywood into a Louisiana beauty salon and let them work. The result was something that has never quite been replicated, and the cast that made it possible went on to live lives as layered and surprising as anything in the script. Here is where they all ended up. Number 1, we have Sally Field as Malin Eatonton, the mother at the emotional center of the film, whose breakdown at the cemetery became one of the most talked about scenes in American cinema that entire decade. 42 years old during production, she brought every ounce of accumulated craft to a role that required her to carry the film's grief without ever letting it tip into performance. She is 79 today. Her personal life moved through 2 marriages. On a first marriage to high school sweetheart Stephen Craig from 1968 to 1975, produced 2 sons, Peter and Eli. A second marriage to producer Alan Greisman from 1984 to 1994 brought a 3rd son, Sam. Between those marriages, a 5-year relationship with Burt Reynolds generated more public attention than either union. She has described her current single life with genuine contentment rather than resignation, a distinction worth noting. In 2023, she received the Screen Actors Guild Life Achievement Award, and in 2026, she signed on to star as Tova in the Netflix adaptation of the best-selling novel Remarkably Bright Creatures, confirming she remains as selective and purposeful about her choices as she has ever been. Number 2, we have Dolly Parton as Truvy Jones, the warm, endlessly quotable beauty salon owner whose presence in the film felt less like casting and more like a natural force of nature finding the role it had always been waiting for. She was 43 during production and turns 80 in 2026, a milestone, Tennessee, marked by officially proclaiming January 19th as Dolly Parton Day in her honor. The personal news surrounding her this year carries real weight alongside the celebration. Her husband of nearly 6 decades, Carl Dean, whom she married on May 30th, 1966, passed away in March 2025, closing a partnership so long and so quietly devoted that it had become its own kind of legend separate from everything the music ever achieved. The professional momentum has not slowed. Her multimedia symphonic tour Threads, My Songs and Symphony runs through August 2026. A Broadway biomusical called Hello, I'm Dolly is in development, and the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is set to present her with the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award, an honorary Oscar that recognizes a lifetime of giving that runs far deeper than any single gesture. Number 3, we have Tom Skerritt as Drum Eatonton, Malin's steady, good-humored husband, whose quieter presence in a film dominated by its female ensemble gave the family dynamic a grounded center to orbit around. 55 years old during production, he is 92 today, and in March 2026 he made headlines when fans at a public convention were visibly stunned by his energy and sharp appearance, an entrance that reminded everyone this is a man who came up through MASH, Alien, and Top Gun without ever coasting on any of it. 3 marriages have shaped his personal life. An early marriage to Charlotte Shanks ran from 1957 to 1972, a second to Sue Orrin from 1977 to 1992, and he has been married to Julie Tokashiki since 1998, a partnership now approaching the 3-decade mark. He continues to make selective public appearances and stays connected to various creative projects, carrying the kind of effortless authority on screen that only comes from having spent 7 decades figuring out exactly what you are doing and why. Number 4, we have Shirley MacLaine as Weezer Boudreaux, the cantankerous, sharp-tongued neighbor whose volcanic irritability concealed a loyalty so fierce it made every scene she shared with the other women feel like a negotiation between equals. She was 55 during filming and celebrated her 92nd birthday in April 2026. I'm placing her among the last remaining figures who genuinely bridge Hollywood's golden era and the present day, a distinction that carries more weight with every passing year. Her marriage to businessman Steve Parker from 1954 to 1982 was conducted largely as an open arrangement by mutual agreement, a fact she has discussed without apology across the decades since. Their one daughter, Sachi Parker, has had her own complicated public relationship with her mother's story. MacLaine has authored multiple books on spirituality and reincarnation that reflect a personal philosophy she has never felt the need to defend or soften for anyone. A recent appearance in Only Murders in the Building in 2022 confirmed she still walks into a scene and owns it completely, a quality that no amount of time has managed to negotiate away from her. Number 5, we have Dylan McDermott as Jackson Latchery, Shelby's devoted husband, whose love for her gives the film's most emotionally devastating passages their human stakes, and whose presence established him as a leading man worth watching long before television, found the right vehicle for him. 27 years old during production, he is 64 today. The role arrived early in his career and gave him a platform that the years following confirmed he was entirely capable of sustaining. His marriage to actress Shiva Rose from 1995 to 2009 produced 2 daughters, and a later engagement to his stalker co-star Maggie Q from 2015 to 2019 ended before reaching the altar. Since 2022, he has been the lead of CBS's FBI, Most Wanted as Supervisory Special Agent Remy Scott, a role that has given him the kind of sustained primetime visibility that his film work in the 1990s suggested was always within reach. The distance between Jackson Latchery tenderly supporting his wife through a medical crisis and a federal agent running down the country's most dangerous fugitives covers the full range of what he has spent 35 years demonstrating he can do. Number 6. We have Olympia Dukakis as Clary Belcher, the wry, warm-hearted widow whose comic timing gave the film some of its most perfectly landed lines, and whose chemistry with Shirley MacLaine produced some of the most enjoyable sparring in the entire production. 58 years old at the time of filming, she arrived carrying an Oscar she had won just 2 years earlier for Moonstruck, a piece of hardware that represented decades of serious theater and film work finally finding its widest possible audience. She married actor Louis Zorich in 1962, and they remained together for 56 years across a partnership that weathered every shift the industry could throw at 2 working performers until his death in 2018. The years that followed brought a role in Netflix's revival of Tales of the City in 2019, and a documentary about her own life and career titled Olympia in 2018, a film that gave her the opportunity to speak about the work on her own terms before the end. Olympia Dukakis passed away on May 1st, 2021, at 89 years old. Number 7. We have Sam Shepard as Spud Jones, Truvy's quietly struggling husband whose handful of scenes carry more emotional information per minute than most supporting roles ever managed to deliver. He 45 years old during production. He brought a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright's understanding of subtext to a role that required almost all of its meaning to live beneath the surface rather than on top of it. His personal life contained its own long and complicated chapter. A marriage to actress Olan Jones from 1969 to 1984 ended while his relationship with Jessica Lange was already underway, a pairing that generated considerable attention and lasted until 2009, producing 2 children across nearly 3 decades together. His final major screen role came in the Netflix series Bloodline from 2015 to 2017, and his final book, Spy of the First Person, was published posthumously in late 2017, a last creative gesture from someone who never stopped writing, regardless of what else was happening around him. Sam Shepard passed away on July 27, 2017, at 73 years old. Part 2. Number 8. We have Daryl Hannah as Annelle Dupuis de Soto, the shy, searching young woman who arrives at Truvy's salon at the film's opening, not entirely sure who she is and spends the rest of it finding out in ways nobody around her quite anticipated. 28 years old during production, she is 65 today. The career she was building at that point had already included Splash and Blade Runner, 2 films from completely different genres that together suggested a range most actresses of her generation never fully got to demonstrate. What has become clearer in the years since is that the industry itself was genuinely difficult for her to navigate. In early 2026, she spoke publicly about her earlier diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome and how it shaped her experience of a world that rewards a very specific kind of social performance she found exhausting to sustain consistently. Environmental activism and documentary filmmaking have become the center of her adult life in a way the acting career never quite did. Long-term relationships with John F. Kennedy Jr. and singer Jackson Browne preceded her marriage to legendary musician Neil Young in 2018, a partnership that has remained steady and deliberately private in the years since. Number 9. We have Kevin J. O'Connor as Sammy DeSoto, the young husband whose relationship with Annelle gives her character its most grounded emotional anchor and whose few scenes carry considerably more weight than the limited screen time might suggest. He was between 25 and 26 during production and is 62 today. The role came early in a career that found its most consistent groove through a working relationship with director Stephen Sommers, leading to appearances in The Mummy and Van Helsing that introduced him to a much wider audience than the Louisiana wedding scenes of Steel Magnolias ever reached on their own. More recently, he has appeared in The Blacklist and Catch-22, two productions on opposite ends of the television spectrum that reflect a character actor's instinct for finding interesting corners in whatever room he walks into. His personal life has stayed almost entirely out of the public record across the decades since the film came out, with no widely documented relationships or marriages surfacing in any meaningful way. The work has always done the talking for him. And there has been enough of it across 35 years to make that a legitimate choice rather than a limitation. Number 10, we have Anne Wedgeworth as Aunt Fern, a colorful presence whose scenes at the wedding reception give the film a taste of the wider social world surrounding the main characters, and whose delivery made every line land with the precision of someone who had been doing this for a very long time. 55 years old during production, she arrived carrying a Tony Award and decades of stage and screen experience that stretched back through Three's Company and Evening Shade, across a career built on exactly the kind of character work this role required. Her personal life included a marriage to actor Rip Torn from 1956 to 1961, a pairing of two performers whose careers would eventually take very different trajectories, and a later marriage to Ernie Martin in 1970 that lasted until her death. She largely retired from professional acting in the mid-2000s, with her final film credit arriving in The Hawk is Dying in 2006, a quiet step back from an industry she had served with consistency and craft for more than 5 decades. Anne Wedgeworth passed away on November 16, 2017, at 83 years old. She would have been 92 in 2026. Number 11, we have Bill McCutcheon as Owen Jenkins, the gentle, good-natured presence whose scenes provide the film with moments of uncomplicated warmth at exactly the points where the surrounding emotional weight needs somewhere to breathe. Born James William McCutcheon, he was 64 during production and brought a career's worth of lived-in warmth to a role that required someone capable of making kindness feel specific rather than generic. Most children who grew up in front of American television in the 1970s and 1980s knew his face through his long-running role as Uncle Wally on Sesame Street, a character he inhabited with the same unforced gentleness that made every adult around him trust him immediately. An Emmy Award recognized the breadth of his work across a career that moved between stage, film, and television, without ever treating any one medium as less worthy of full attention than the others. He married Anne Louise Rivers in 1951, and they remained together for the rest of his life, raising 3 children across more than 50 years of partnership. Bill McCutcheon passed away on January 9, 2002, at 77 years old. He would have been 101 in 2026. Number 12, we have Janine Turner as Nancy Beth Marmillion, a supporting presence in the film's social world, whose brief appearances gave the Louisiana setting an additional layer of local texture and whose post-Steel Magnolias path took her somewhere almost no one from that production would have predicted. 25 years old during filming, she is 63 today. The Emmy-nominated role that followed in Northern Exposure established her as a leading actress capable of carrying a drama series across multiple seasons, a significant step up from the smaller role she occupied in this film. Her personal life has followed its own distinct course. She never married, though an early engagement to actor Alec Baldwin and a relationship with Mikhail Baryshnikov placed her briefly in the entertainment world's more visible romantic conversations. She has been a single mother to her daughter Juliet for years, on a role she has discussed with genuine pride rather than as a circumstance requiring explanation. She founded Constituting America, a nonprofit dedicated to constitutional education for young people, and now works primarily as a published author, radio host, and public speaker, a second professional life that has run for years alongside occasional returns to acting. Number 13, we have Jonathan Ward as Jonathan Eatonton, the eldest Eatonton son, whose presence in the family scenes gives Malin's household a sense of genuine domestic fullness, and whose post-Hollywood story became one of the more genuinely surprising reinventions connected to anyone in this cast. 18 years old during filming, he is 56 today. The acting career wound down through the late 1990s without a dramatic exit, simply a deliberate pivot towards something that interested him more completely than the industry had come to. He founded Icon 4x4, a high-end automotive design and engineering firm based in Los Angeles that specializes in reimagining classic vehicles for modern performance and aesthetics. A business that has built a devoted following among collectors and enthusiasts who may have no idea the man behind it spent his teenage years on a film set in Louisiana. He married his wife Jamie, and they have 2 children together, a family life built almost entirely outside the entertainment world that launched his public name in the first place. The distance between a supporting role in a 1989 drama and running one of the most distinctive custom automotive companies in the country is considerable, and he covered it entirely on his own terms. In number 14, we have Julia Roberts as Shelby Eatonton Latchery, the radiant, stubborn, deeply loved young woman whose determination to live fully despite the risks it carries gives the entire film its emotional reason for existing, and whose performance announced the arrival of one of the most naturally magnetic screen presences of her entire generation. 21 years old during filming, she is 58 today. What happened on set was not always comfortable. Director Herbert Ross reportedly singled her out repeatedly during production, leaving her in tears on multiple occasions, a fact her co-stars Sally Field and Shirley MacLaine have both discussed with considerable directness in the years since. The two older actresses essentially ran interference on her behalf, a behind-the-scenes dynamic that adds a very different layer to the mother-daughter warmth their characters share on screen. A marriage to country singer Lyle Lovett in 1993 lasted barely 2 years and generated enormous tabloid attention. High-profile relationships with Benjamin Bratt and Matthew Perry followed before she married cinematographer Daniel Moder in 2002, a partnership now past the 20-year mark with 3 children at its center. Pretty Woman arrived the same year Steel Magnolias did, and the combination of those two releases in 1989 and 1990 changed the scale of everything that followed. Her 2023 Netflix thriller Leave the World Behind confirmed she can still anchor a major production with complete authority, 35 years after Shelby first walked into Truvy's salon. 37 years since Steel Magnolias first moved audiences to laughter and tears in the same sitting, and that cemetery scene still hits exactly as hard as it always did. Which cast member's story surprised you most? Leave it in the comments and subscribe for more.